Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up from April 30th to May 6th. This week I read 2 books, I watched 1 show, and I listened to 1 book. I hope this setup is okay. I'm kind of hiding from the sun at the moment because that is due east. And if I put you against that door, then basically I can't see anything because it's the sun right in my eyeballs. So this is what we've improvised. Also, travel update. We are currently in very beautiful Constanta. In fact, as I look out this door, I see the Black Sea. It's literally right there. I will show you some footage of that. The first book that I finished this week is Fairy War by E.J. Graham. This is actually written by a friend of mine, Jen. She's in my comments all the time. She has been since before she published this, and hopefully she'll continue to be here after this review. She already knows I gave this 3 stars and she's still talking to me, so I think we'll be fine. Essentially, this is a book about a guy named Clint. He's 16 years old, he lives on the Isle of Wight, and as we meet him, he has just found a small fairy in his garden. He then goes on to find out that he's going to be an integral part in a war that the fairies are having in their own sort of realm, kind of within our realm, if you will. And this goes to some fantastic and ridiculous extents. I'm going to do my best not to give you any spoilers in this and basically just talk about what worked for me and what didn't. What worked for me is it was an intriguing story. I did want to know what was going to happen next, even though it was often things that I was like, oh man, what even is the time scale of this? If I didn't already know, I could also tell that Jen watches a lot of superhero type of movies because a lot of this had that kind of feel to it. The things that didn't really work for me is I didn't really understand most of the characters as individual characters. It was just kind of like, person A went and did this, person B went and did this, that type of thing. I didn't really get a feel for the characters individually, which is unfortunate because there are a lot of characters in this. That was another thing that I was a little bit iffy on, is the amount of characters, simply because I don't think we needed to be introduced to all of them all in this volume. There are also a couple of things I could nitpick near the end that are simply just not my style and not something that I would have put into a book, such as basically everyone being paired up at the end and everybody being in an I love you situation even though I swear they've known each other for like a week. I was also not really clear on how old some of the fairy characters were and whether or not it was actually appropriate if they were to have a relationship with any of the teenagers that we meet in this book. I could be completely wrong. They could be the same age and I just didn't understand it, or it wasn't explained well enough. One of those 2 things. That being said, this is the first book in a series, so if you're interested in a very magical series where people are basically going all over the place trying to solve this problem, definitely check it out. The second book is coming out sometime soon. I don't know what the date is on that. The next book I read this week is called Missing Clarissa. This is about 2 high school best friends who decide that they're going to do a podcast for their journalism class based on this missing persons case from 20 years ago in their small town. As I've probably mentioned way too many times, I've watched a lot of true crime content over the last year or so, so obviously this appealed to me because of that. At the beginning of this book, I had a little bit of trouble remembering which character was which, because I hadn't really cemented in my brain that Blair is the brilliant one, but also has these problems, and then the other one is this one, and then... But eventually it was very easy to understand who was being talked about, which character was doing what, which is important because this switches between their perspectives without really telling you it's doing that. I mean that in like a chapter heading type of way. Obviously it's telling you it's following so-and-so because it's talking about so-and-so. This one I actually read all in one day. I basically woke up, started reading it, and just kept reading it until I was done, and then eventually had to start working. This had some great twists and turns along the way. It talked about ethical journalism and the trouble you can get yourself into if you're not doing things properly, and I really appreciated that. I enjoyed this. The one show we watched this week was the last of the episodes of Wednesday. I think we watched episodes 4 through 8. I really enjoyed this, and I'm very excited that there's going to be another season at least, because I very much enjoyed this character, the characterization of it, the way they brought this fresh life to this character, and also I found out that some of the filming locations were actually in Bucharest, I believe, which is where we were when we watched it, so that was cool. Not that I got to see any of them because we were quarantining, because after 3 years of trying not to catch a certain thing, we caught that certain thing. We've since tested negative, but obviously my voice still sounds a little bit weird. The book I listened to this week is The Golden Spoon. This one has to do with a baking competition, but then something goes terribly awry and people are trying to figure out decades-old secrets along the way. This one is a cool listening experience because all of the different points of view had a different voice actor, which I really appreciated. Essentially for this competition, it's 6 bakers who are brought to this family estate of the woman who's been running this show for 10 years. She's basically America's grandmother, even though she doesn't have any kids, she doesn't have any grandkids. And then over the course of a week, they basically have a challenge and then somebody is sent home at the end of every day. Another thing I found enjoyable about this is we had some unreliable narrators, so you didn't exactly know what actually happened, you just know what they want you to know, which is always intriguing. And we start off knowing that somebody has passed away by, I believe it's the 4th day, but then we go back to the beginning of the week and we get to learn about all of these characters and why they're on the baking show in the first place and what their motivations are and all that type of stuff. And then we start seeing people going home, but it seems like they're going home for big mistakes a baker would never actually make, and you're wondering if there's maybe some sabotage. That whole part of it, I figured out pretty quickly who was doing that, but one of the contestants is there because they want to figure out what happened to their mother, who actually disappeared from the area many, many years ago. I loved seeing all of these different character reveals and getting to know all of these different bakers and figure out who was going to go home and why they were going to go home and what they were going to do about why things were being unfair. And there were just so many character entanglements that I just really enjoyed reading about. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!